What up, foodie fam? This is Fritz the Foodie, and today we're going to talk about grafting, the farmer's graffiti. Now, there are a few things about grafting that are really cool. The first is that even though this concept is from like 1830, this is very new. So this is good news about food, episode 3. And what's dope about episode 3 is that the second was 24 at that moment. And so that's cool. But let's see. When we're talking about grafting, what does that mean? That's basically when you have two things, you cut off the top, and then you switch them. And you basically just say, okay, your roots go with your top, and your top go with your roots. And that's just it. It's just like a little switch of the heads. Think of it like a metaverse, and just everyone finds their legs, I guess. Which I do think will be part of like a really big overarching love story between food itself, like the plants. Because imagine how much competition they've been going through in such a tight space for so many millions of years. I mean, there could be like a serious silent war going on that we're just completely oblivious to. So I've already nominated my pick for who's gonna settle this. Anyway, moving on. This was a concept I avoided in general because it's kind of scary. It's like, okay, this sounds like Frankenstein. Because not only will you first have like some sort of plant on another plant, but now you could have some sort of meat on another meat, and then pretty soon you could have some sort of meat on a human, or human meat on an animal. And there was just a lot of stuff to untangle at first, because I was like, all right, bottom line, cannibalism, not cool. Drunk people, maybe, I don't know. Rick and Morty will have to deal with that. But yeah, so there are some really cool things, but here are just some food for thought, things to avoid. The first is, don't make snow white apples. All right, don't put fruit on a super poisonous plant in an effort to poison people. Just poison them with the old rice and beans, like the old way. Second, drug plants. Don't go too nuts with the drug plants. You don't need a weed plant that also makes opium. You don't need a cocaine tree that also makes ecstasy pills. Sure. Anyway, I don't do enough drugs apparently. So yeah, moving on. Also, if you can grow meat on trees, hold off. Just till we're making sure that we have a pretty good understanding of nerves and intelligence and stuff. Just because something is dumber doesn't exactly mean it's more fair or less cruel. Anyway, if you're going to do something cool, like have sugarcane grow cinnamon bark, then you should call it something cool, like cinnacane. Do not call it something like batch 488, all right? And yes, there will be people that discover things first, but you didn't discover cinnamon, you didn't discover sugarcane, you're just Columbusing this whole idea, you have no idea how it works. So don't take credit for it. This is just part of the process of nature. This is food we're talking about. Next, this is a asexual horizontal gene transfer, just for the flavors, all right? We're just trying to make tastier apples. That's it. So whatever falls from the tree, that's what's gonna grow. So it's not like if you have potato roots on an apple tree and that apple falls, it's gonna grow an apple tree, just like a very normal apple tree. It's not gonna have potato roots suddenly. And that's just kind of the general rule. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, I don't know shit about farming, but I do know that when I was looking and doing my research, there's a few different ways to read things, and one of the things that was cool was they were talking about grafting. And the top part of the graft is called the scion, as in evolution, and the bottom part is called the stock, as in Woodstock. So here we have scion and stalk. When you put them together, they recommended a few ways to like seal that, just to make sure that the two are touching and exchanging information while at the same time keeping their own individual identities. And they were like, yeah, you should probably bond it with, these things or beeswax. And I was like, yeah, beeswax, because it's none of your beeswax. What's going on in there? Like, this is some next level stuff going on where plants are, again, asexually, horizontally transferring genes like it's their job. So, just, keep that in mind. Speaking of which, there's the cleft graph, the crown, the approach, and the tongue graph. And these are just like a few different ways to do it. Not really so much like spirally stuff, but could be cool. Pineapples might be pretty cool, and this is why I mentioned it earlier that I'm gonna have someone that I'm betting on, and that would be pineapples. See, I have this theory that there is this beautiful love story, and it has to do with pineapples because they have the crown and they're golden and they're dope, but also they have this past of posing with kings in portraits. They were the international, they still are, the international symbol for hospitality, but especially in early America, because in about like the early 1600s, when Americans were ferrying to the Caribbean islands and then coming back with pineapples, it was really treacherous. And so, people would die, and if they did come back safely, they would sacrifice a pineapple, and just to show that they made it back safe and they're alive. And at that point, if you could actually procure a pineapple for your guests at your dinner party, you were like, you were the cat's meow. You were the talk of the town right there, because that was just insanely tough at the time. So that's how it became the international symbol for hospitality, and a symbol of diplomacy, which is kind of fun. So why do I mention this? Well, there's something interesting about the way that things are grafted. It's better if they're in the same genus of the same family, but some don't work well. And one that really caught my eye was that you cannot grow, or it's really difficult to grow, sweet cherries on a sour cherry foundation. And I just found that really quite poetic and beautiful, because I'm in Asia right now, and cherry trees are a little bit, important. And it's like, they're both cherry trees. Like, that should be very simple. That should be a lot easier than getting stoner trees that grow all these stone fruits on the same tree. I mean, we're talking plums, apricots, peaches, just dangling right next to each other. And I'm like, this looks like a fruit pie chart. But anyway, yeah, those are called fruit salad trees, and they're just like, they're a thing. They've been around, but for some reason, this sweet cherry tree can't be on top of a sour cherry tree. And I was like, So I have this idea that pineapple is searching for its roots. Yeah. And that's like the love story, and the pineapple is kind of like the relative Helen of Troy for the plant species, because plants can't move around, So in general, just don't try to take too much credit or intellectual property for these methods and whatnot. If you come up with a revolutionary new way to graft like I'm about to, then I guess you can call it after yourself. But in general, like, you're generally just soil that grew legs and then turns back into soil. So on the general scale of food and how trees think and stuff, like it's like, dude, I made the apple, not you. You just carried it. So anyway, moving on. Now we have tomatoes. And tomatoes, that's what really made my head turn to the point where I was like, this is the next agricultural revolution, because they were able to grow cherry tomatoes quite easily on a root system of white potatoes. Now, potatoes, that's a story for another time, but potatoes are like super important for most agricultural revolutions and stuff like that, and at least the ones I care about. And sorry, I just had to have a moment. Yes, just to revel in it. And yeah, so cherry tomatoes on potato roots. And the thing is that again, you know, the tomatoes are gonna make cherry tomatoes plants, and the potatoes are gonna make potato plants. However, you can graft them together. So, you know, it's still, they all grow from seeds, but you can graft them together. So I was thinking that this is my idea for the latest agricultural revolution, and part of the reason why this is such good news about food. By the way, the pineapple stuff was my Fritz's Fun Foodie Fact for the day. Food for thought. But going back to this Fritz method of the Fritz graft, what you would do is you would have a gigantic industrial complex where it would be like a massive factory. And what the machines would do is they would just cut two plants, switch them, and then, well, you know, switch them to the appropriate plants so that the scion and the stalk are what you're looking for. And you know, there might be a few ways you could do that. And then you have like a hollowed out piece of balsa wood or something like that. And then you could use that as a sleeve, because you know the joint where the two are conjoined is going to be a little bit weak. And then you could just have machines do that. So they'd just be like cut, pap, and then, you know, secure. And basically the idea would be that the two parts go into the wood, and then the wood fuses with it too. And now your weakest link is your strongest link. And that's it for today. Hope you had a good Halloween.